All right, Baruch Hashem. This is working. End of the meeting.
Recording in progress.
This works. This is okay. Yep. Baruch Hashem, how's the sound, guys? Shmuleki, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. You see a difference between today and yesterday?
I cannot tell yet.
Okay, good. All right. That means we're good. As long as we're working.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Wow. Wow. Oh, today will be a great one. L'chaim. Yaakov, you ready? Or not? Oh, don't give me no error. It's not day today. Okay, guys, give me another second. Today was destined. Unplug and replug. Unplug. Replug. A second. Okay, try it again. Nachamol. There we go. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. We're dedicating today's class Le'ilui Nishmas Shimshon Nechemia ben Yeshua Karpel. Today's 3 Prakim is Hilchos, Tefillin, Umezuzah, V'Sefer Torah, Prakim, Beis, Gimel, and Dalet. Before we begin, 2 quick comments regarding what we learned yesterday. Aleph, when it comes to the Kohanim washing their hands, Taharas HaYadayim, the 6th precondition, I think I said that they wash their hands the way we wash it for Negelvasser. Really, there are different minhagim. Actually, in Chabad Bayos, and I'm sure in many others, the Kohanim prior to Birchas Kohanim wash their hands the way we wash our hands before our Moitzi. That's number 1. Number 2, when we spoke about the way we are to say the Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu, Barucheinu Abracha, and I said that you should l'chayda put a comma, because it's a bracha mishuleshes, and it's written b'Torah Ksuva. First of all, that is the way we are to understand the words. However, as the Rebbe points out on the Likutei Sichos Chelik Chav Daled, page 411, quoting from the Kesser Shem Tov, that even if we put the comma after b'Torah, you have to know digduk, it also has the same meaning. It's always, it's not written 3 times in the Torah, so it doesn't matter where you put the comma. And actually, someone showed me that in Siddur Tehillas Hashem, someone quoted that letter of the Rebbe in that page, again, Chav Daled, page 411, that it doesn't matter. They put the comma there because it means that it's a bracha, that's a triple bracha in the Torah, means written in the Torah. And then you say that was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. All right, so Chevra, we are starting with Perek Sheni. Perek Sheni is all about writing tefillin. So let's get going. Chevra, Keitzad Halach, Perek Sheni has 11 halachas. Halacha number 1, Keitzad Koisvenas HaTefillin Shel Rosh. As we mentioned, the Rambam always speaks first about the Tefillin Shel Rosh, even though, of course, you first put on the Tefillin Shel Yad. We spoke about the Ragachover. We explained the Rebbe's insight that since it's more Tadirosh, just to add another layer to that Taka Rosh is something constant. The Yad, the mitzvah, is only a one-time thing when you put it on, because as we learn in Chassidus, Alpi Pnimius, that the mind is something we are always in control over. Even a Beinani, I can choose what to think about. My heart, from a Beinani, we don't have full control over it. Things come into the heart. We have the power, hiskafia, to ignore it. a one-time, but the tediros, that every yid, even the Beinani, we always have the ability to use our minds to what we want, which should be something connected to godliness, to Torah, to mitzvahs, v'chulei. So beginning first with Tefillin Shorosh, says Rambam Koisvin Arba Parshiyos, that we write 4 portions, the ones that we mentioned above. They are written al Arba Kolafin on 4 separate pieces of parchment. Each one is rolled up by itself. And they are placed in 4 different compartments. Now mechubarim means either they are covered by a single piece of leather, but as we will see, it's definitely ideal l'shitas Rambam that all of the outer box of the Tefillin Shorosh should be made out of one leather, as he speaks about the way you form it, not only the top box, but also the tetura, which is the bottom base, also the ma'abartam, which is the place through which the strap goes through, as we'll speak in a moment. So here we can say mechubarim could mean very good. Mechubarim means they're all made ideally out of oir echad. And v'shal yad, the hand tefillin, kois v'noisen arba part. The same 4 parshas are written by arba dafim. What does daf means? So we say daf means a page. No, not over here. Daf means a column. They're written on 4 different columns, but on one parchment. And that one parchment, v'gadol come in Sefer Torah, whether it's shal reish, whether it's shal yad, it's rolled up like a Sefer Torah, meaning that you go from the back to the beginning, as we do by a mezuzah. It's all like a Sefer Torah. That misoifay letchilasay, it's rolled up. Maybe also because Sefer Torah means it's not folded. It's rolled, and it's rolled from the back until the front. Umanichai, and the yad is all placed in one bias because it's only one parchment. Halacha number 2. V'tzorech lizor beparshiyasem, you have to make sure for the following halachas. Number 1, here we dive into the first controversy. The Rambam says, she'im asa hastuma psucha oya psucha stuma, if you change the type of parsha. We mentioned there are 669 parshiyas in the Torah. Machloikes Rambam and Rosh. What does psucha stuma mean? Rambam holds psucha stuma means, okay, well, not yet. We're ready in the next halacha. Psucha, not bad, but we gotta sharpen up. Psucha stuma means that in the Torah, a parsha psucha will begin in the beginning of a line. Because the previous parsha, it was left open. Stuma means it begins 9 letters or more into the line. Now, the Rambam is not speaking about where you end these parshas. The Rambam is speaking, do you begin any one of the 4 from the beginning, or you begin it in the middle? So the Rambam says you have to know which one is which. And if you inverted it, then it's going to be puzzle. I just want to say that there's a Shita Sarash, another understanding of Psucha Stuma. There is a Taz that says, let's make a pshara to cover both the Rambam and the Rosh. The Alter Rebbe says that making this compromise is not like the Rambam and not like the Rosh. Just good to know that if we follow Chabad, we should make sure we get Seifrim who follow Shita so Alter Rebbe in Psucha Stuma. Okay. Ushloishas haparshiyas, so the Shoin is called Psucha, the first 3 are opened. The Rambam already went through the 4 parshiyas, and the 4th, which is V'hayim Shemaya Stuma. Guys, I want to tell you what that means. That means, open up your mezuzah, you'll see the same thing. That V'hayim Shemaya doesn't begin from the beginning of the line. Let's speak about Tefillin. It has to begin, who knows how many letters who remembers? 9 letters. Asher, Asher, Asher. So you leave 9 letters open, and then you begin V'haya im Shemaya. And if you did it otherwise, it's invalid. Halacha number 3. Another thing you have to be mindful of. So many words in the Holy Tongue, you have letters like a Vav, like a Yud, etc., an Aleph, sometimes a Chaf, a Hey, that they can be a letter, they can be a vowel. So somewhere like Sukkos, you can spell Sukkos, Sama, Chaf, Saf, and you can read it with Chaylam, Sukkos. Or you can put Vavs, Sukkos. So you have to know what's Mali, what's Chasei. You have to make sure that they're written exactly the way they are written in a pre-check Sefer Torah, because here also it's essential. She'im Kasav, that which should have been without the Yud, without the Vav, as a Mali, even though you're not changing the meaning of the word, it's going to be puzzle. And what will you need to do? Here at least you can rectify it, because if there's an extra letter you can erase it. But even worse, if you wrote Mali Chaser, which means you have to add a letter, one of the rules you have, not by a Sefer Torah, but you have by Tefillin and Mezuzahs, and that is, you have to write it ala Seder. So if you wrote and then you have to go back and add a letter, that letter is written out of the order, the whole thing is invalid. Puzzle the aim like takana. Mamish, that's the way it is. Now, I want to remind everyone, what did the Rambam write? We learned this yesterday, that a Sefer Torah has to be written in Achsav. The Rambam writes that Tefillin and Mezuzah, since everyone knows them, they can be written by heart. Everything we're learning right now, the Rambam held that we all know by heart. This is just Stam Chapters. And it's wow, how much Torah was Torah Baal Peh. People used to chazir everything by heart. We'll read it through quickly. Right, halacha daled. In the first parsha, Kaddish li kol b'chor. Just to point out, the word b'chor could have been written beis chaf reish. Right, the letter vav is not pronounced. It's a vowel of oi. It's a cholam. It's written mali. Same thing zachar mali. B'chayzik, you see, chayzik. You could have written it ches vav zayin kuf, but it's written chaser. Hoitzi mali yoitzim. Now we're going into the letters chaser vav yoitzim. That means after the yud and the tzaddik there is no vav. Yiviyacha. What's the mali? It's not yud. Also yiviyacha. You could have written without a yud. Ho'amoidi chaser ayivusi mali la'avisecha chaser vav, not yud. You have a yud in avisecha. You understand? In other words, after the vase, before the saf, there is no vav. Ha'avoida chaser matzis chaser ashvi mali matzis mali soir chaser givalacha chaser bavur mali lois mali lizkar mali enecha mali toida mali hoitziacha chaser uyud. In other words, yes a vav b'hoitziacha. Whenever there are two options, that I'm has to specify which one is which. Hachuka chaser l'miyada mali halacha hey parsha sheniya. What's the parsha sheniya? V'hayiki v'yacha. So let's go. So chaser yud, which means the second yud. Yeah, it begins with the words Yiviyach. Vila Avaisecha Chaser Vav Chamoir Chaser B'Chor Mali B'Chayzek Chaser Etzion Mali V'Yarik Chaser B'Chor Mali Mi B'Chor Chaser V'Ad B'Chor Mali Zevei Chaser Vav. I don't know what the Rama means by Chaser Vav. I don't know what other option would there have been by the word Zevei. Anyways, weiter. B'Chol B'Chor Mali Lo Ois Mali Yod Cha. That's it. Here you have a hey. Oh, it's the hey is silent. It's like a komatz, but there's a komatz anyways under the chav. You would not need it, but yeah, Hashem wants us to write it with the hey. Right, the yad keya, that's the whole Torah Shabbal Peh. From the yad cha with the hey. Ula teitafais chaser vav, but which vav? So here it says by me, tinyana. Really, the other girsas say achrayna. It means the same thing because the first vav between the tes and the fei, you have over there a vav. It's between the fei and the saf is where you don't have the vav. So tinyana, which means the second or the last, means the same thing. The first vav you have, the second, which is the last, you don't have. Einecha, both yuds, mali. B'chayzek chaserot yonu mali. Halacha vav chaver parsha shloisha shema ayin shol shema gedola. So the Rambam is getting a little bit off the chaser mali. Another nuance: the ayin has to be big. The dalid of echad gedola. What do you have from these two letters, Yaakov? What's ayin dalid? Aid. That we are testifying to the fact that the emes is Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Ma'oidecha, right? There's no vav in between the aleph and the dalet. Chassid, livanecha mali, bevesecha below yud shniya. You have the first yud between the vase and the saf. You don't have a yud between the saf and the line gechav. Uvkomecha mali lo is mali yodecha. Chaser lititafas, both vav are missing. Enecha, both yuds you have. Mezuzah is chaser vav rishayna. Beisecha b'lo yud shniya b'sharecha malei. And final parsha revi is v'hoyim shemaya, missing what? What are we missing? Yaakov Chaltkop. We're missing a vav. Shomoya, right? It could have been mem vav ayin. You don't have that vav. Mitzvoisai bevav, only bevav achas. With a vav, yoyda mali, malkoish mali, tziroishcha chaser vav, vishtachavisa mali, yivula mali, hatoiva chaser, noisim chaser, oisam chaser, oisam mali, letofas chaser vav shnia, einecha mali, oisam chaser, bevesecha b'lo yud shnia, uvkomecha mali, mezuzais mali, bevesecha b'lo yud shnia, b'sherecha mali, bevesecha chaser vav. Okay, so now we went through the four parshas that Rambam wrote it down, and again that Rambam writes that mutar lichtov shaloi meleksav. I love that. You have to remember every single mali and chaser, but that's not a problem because everyone knows it. All right, we should be included in those everyone's amen. Halacha ches. Another detail. Now, when people learn about Tagin, many people are familiar with the Shatnis Gats. The Rambam is not even mentioning those letters, those 7 letters that have Tagin. The Rambam is mentioning specific letters that have these crowns, and with the details of how many crowns do they have. 1 little Zion, 2, 3, 4, we'll see in a moment. What are these tagan? What are these crowns? They're standing Zions, right? That are on top of certain letters, as we have also in the Sefer Torah. It says that Rambam ve'elu ein ha'oisius hamitu yoga sheba arba parshas elu halachetes in the parsha Rishonim yesh bo ois achas bilvad. Clearly, ois achas bilvad, to the exclusion of all others, and that is the mem susuma from miyamim. And on it, when you have a tagim, also specific, how many little crowns, Zionses do you have? 3, Shalosh Zayinim, Parsha Shniya, Yesh Li Chamish Oisiyas, V'chalachas B'hem Hey. All of them happen to be the Hey. Val Kol Hey, from the 5-4 you have, not 3 zayins that you have on top of the mem. Here you have it, right, in this parsha, you have 4 little crowns. Nu Kavan, wake up, where you're tagging. The Elohim, hey of the word unasana, the hey, the first hey, and the final hey of Hiksha, and the hey of Ayaharoig, and the hey of Yodcha. In the third portion, you have 5 letters, and these are the Kuf of Uvukumecha, Yesh Aleha, Shalosh, Chevre Freilach, you need a coffee, Shalosh Zainim, and the Kuf of Kshartam. On that you have 3 Zainim, the Tes, and the Pei. These 3 letters of the words Toitafais, Alkolis Mishlosh, then you have Arba Zayin, and on the 4th Parsha, you have 5 letters that have these Tagin, the Pei of the Osafta, on it you have 3 Zayin, on the Tov of the Osafta, on it you have 1 Zayin, and again on the Tes and the Pei of Toitafais, you have in each one 4 Zayin, comes out, says the Rambam, Kol Ha'oisius Hamituyogay Sheish Esrei. Now I know there's a question we have to move, but so we have the Shatnez Gats, and also Al Pi Kabbalah Chevra, you should know that there are many other crowns that are put on many other letters that Rambam did not write his halachas based on the inyanim that you have in Kabbalah, but these are the basic tagim that are needed l'shitas harambam. And again, mashma from the Rambam that it's not minimum. The fact that the Rambam gives a number means that Rambam is paskening Al Pi halacha, this is it and not less nor more. V'im lo yasa tagin. Unlike Mali Chaser, unlike Parshas Tuma, Parsha Psucha, the way that Rambam understands it, there it's essential. Here, even though this is the way it should be, it's not essential. And if you add it or subtract it, the tefillin will not be possible, which is great, because what happens nowadays, every time you give your tefillin to check, to a good sefer, many times they'll tell you, it was kosher, but it wasn't muhudr. Some of it is the tagin, and that's the beauty. Since you are allowed to add, so then you can add it and fakert. You upgraded your tefillin, unlike if a letter, let's say, was missing, you can't add a letter because that's shalom and asayda. Now, halacha yud. Halakech tefillin mamisha ena mumcha. If you buy tefillin from a non-expert, says the Rambam tzarech lebatkun, you have to examine them, meaning to make sure that, how do you know that the scrolls are written with all of the rules that we said above? You know how easy it is to go into a chassid amala? You have no idea, because you're reading it. The word means the same thing. You're not chopping it. You have to proofread it. You have to know how to proofread. Okay, now, so what do you do? Yeah, how do you examine it? Like, how many do you have to examine? So, lakach memenu me'er k'tzitza. The word k'tzitza, the Rambam uses this word clearly. Later, we'll learn this in today's Perek, for boxes. I'm saying that because in every box, like in the Rosh, you can have 4 parchments. So, from every 100 boxes, you have to open up 3. Which 3? Yad or Rosh, doesn't matter. Oy shtayim shel Rosh va'acha shel Yad, oy shtayim shel Yad va'acha shel Rosh. But you know what you cannot do, Chevra? You cannot do all 3 shal Rosh, nor all 3 shal Yad. It should be a mixture. And if 3 of them are all kashed, all of the rules above, then the person who wrote it, Huchzak Zeho Ish, Varei Elu Ksherim, Ve'ein Hashar Tzarech Bedika. Guys, this is provided that the person who sold you, who has this 100 Ketzitzois, is saying, I bought them all from the same Sofer. And you check 3, then Muchzak, all the rest are good. But if this merchant has these boxes in different packages, we don't even ask him whether it's from the same person or not. We already know it's not. Because it's not that they had like a standard size box that are only 100 fits. It wasn't that way. People, every sefer would package their tefillin in their separate package. When you find different piles or different packages, that means they came from 3 different sefer. So from each pile, you understand, from each package, check 3. Kula means not every single one, guys. Kula means from every pekala, take out 3, some shal yad, some shal reish, and check them. Shecheskas hatzivasim means they were written by different people. Final halacha yud aleph, hakisef tefillin b'chsav yadoi, if you write tefillin by yourself, or if you buy them from an expert, or oy mishad adam, they were not from an expert, but you know what happened? Turned out that the non-expert got it right. Ubedakam, it's once they were checked tefillin, and now you put them back into the leather boxes. Before we go on, Chevra, the Rebbe tells us whenever you buy tefillin today, ideal, check them right away. For my 50th birthday, I decided to buy a new pair of tefillin, and I went mamish to the best. Happened, put mine. The mazel is that I checked it. You buy a brand new pair of tefillin, you pay denachves, I paid that $1,200, you pay, you think it's, no, and it was not kosher. Well, it's buy it and check it. Question is, now that you checked it, what is your chiyuv? So the Rambam writes, Einoit tzarech lebatkam pam acheres, you never have to check it again. Now, I want you to know that nowadays, just to know the din, since the compartments are made not the way it was made then, and the ink that we use is not the same type of ink, and today's tefillin is prone to get smudged or erased much more than in those days. I'm going back a few hundred years. Based on that, like the Mata Ephraim that the Rebbe always quotes, said that it's ideal for us to check our tefillin and mezuzahs once a year. Even though al pi din you don't have to do it. According to the Rambam, if you check them once and you're constantly wearing them, you never have to check them again if nothing appears not to be okay. If the outer box is complete, you're not mechuyev to check it. And furthermore, the Rambam says, the tefillin that I'm wearing is Michel Avi Ima. Always go backwards. My mother's father. A lot to say on this. First of all, what's b'chal darai from Hillel by saying that these tefillin are my mother's father's tefillin? What's the darai that he didn't check them? Could be he checked them. And so the simple answer would be is that normally when tefillin are puzzle, you're really in trouble. Unlike a Sefer Torah that could be fixed because you don't have to write them on the Seder. If a letter gets erased, you are in trouble. So even if it never became invalidated. If not, he would not be allowed to wear it, and he wore his grandfather's tefillin. Let's leave it at that. Bottom line is, we follow the Rebbe advocated to follow the chumrah of the Mata Ephraim. The Mata Ephraim is not saying that you're mechuyev, but to check them very often. And we check, the Rebbe wanted people ideally to check their tefillin and mezuzahs every year, b'chodesh Elul. Chavre, let's move on. Perek Shlishi.
Every year.
Every year. Perek Shlishi. Now, if you remember, in Perek Aleph we learned that there are 10 halacha l'Moshe Missinais regarding tefillin. 2 of them, Shmuli, are about the ksivasan, and the other 8 halacha l'Moshe Missinais are regarding asiyasan ukshirasan. This is the topic of Perek Shlishi. We're going to go into the 8 halacha l'Moshe Missinais regarding the binding and the making of tefillin. This Perek has 19 halachas. We went from 11 to 19. I think the third one today has 26. So I know we're good in time now, but oy gevaldik. Let's go. Halacha Aleph. Shmoina halachas yesh b'maisa tefillin. This is the 8 from the 10 that we mentioned in Perek Aleph. I think it was halacha gimel. We're not adding more. What are the 8 concerning the Maisa HaTefillin? And all of them are halacha l'Moshe Missinai. And therefore says that Rambam, all of them are ma'akiv, they are essential. And meaning, ve'im shina ba'achas mehen, bomba pasal. Ve'elohein, number 1, shehiu mirubois, they have to be perfectly square. Ve'chein tefiras and biribua, this is all part of number 1, which means that as we will see, when you sew it closed, just give the words, you have the bias. The bias is the box in which you have the parshiyos. You have the bottom base, which we call titura. By us, it's beautiful and big and thick. They had it much skinnier. And then in the end of the titura and back of the titura, you have the ma'abarta. The ma'abarta is the leather through which, ma'abarta means a passageway, because the leather, either of the shalroish or of the shalyad, goes through the ma'abarta, and then you use it to bind it on your head, bind it on your hand. So when he says that the box should be square, not only the top box, even the bottom base that we call the titura, and therefore the sewing, the direction of the we'll see every side should have 3 stitches. All of that should be exactly squared. Which means that the diagonal must be equal. Which means, guys, that the 90-degree corner. What is that called? When you have a the right angle. The right angle has to be exact. That means each 90 degrees should be exactly the same. I want you to know that the Rambam's tefillin was much smaller than our tefillin, even though he does not give a size for the tefillin shel roish, but he's going to give a size for the tefillin shel yad. A lot of it has to do, I can speak it out right now, already connected to the next Perek. When we're going to learn today's shir, the next Perek, all of the halachas of what you could do with tefillin, what you cannot do with tefillin, you see, as we know from the Gemara, that they used to wear the tefillin mamish the whole day. And you can just appreciate that we who go l'chumrah and we follow the larger shir of the Alter Rebbe's tefillin, it's big, beautiful tefillin, it's not easy to wear that the whole day. Even though I'm sure people can do it, you get used to it. But wearing the tefillin the whole day, and we're speaking about in the next Perek, people who by mistake went into the bathroom with it, because it was very little. It was very comfortable, and since you wear it the whole time, there was a possibility that you're gonna, God forbid, forget about you wearing tefillin, which is definitely not ideal. And because of that forgetfulness or potential forgetfulness, we dafka don't wear tefillin the whole day. Point is, no matter how little it is, it has to be a perfect square. Now, the Rambam say cube, no. Cube means, does the height have to be the same size? No, it does not. It can be a little bit bigger. Take a look at your tefillin. Could be by your tefillin, the height. Okay, now, number 2, halacha moish, number 2. V'shia ba'or shel rosh tzura shin miyamin u'smal. That's from God. There has to be the protrusion of a shin, and what the Rambam is going to give details. The right side, a 3-headed shin. The left side, a 4-headed shin. The others, the moist, a lot of Kabbalah over here. More details. The biggest thing about the shin is that it may not be made through putting the tefillin into a form, into a mold. A mold is used for everything other than the shin. The shin has to be brought out with tweezers, with different instruments. It's a ganz avoided to make that. Number 3, sheyichrei chaparshis b'matlis. Now, guys, I want you to know I spoke to here in LA. We have a sofer. I just want to thank him, Rabbi Yosef Teitelbaum, who's a master sofer. And the word matlis in Chayenu, what is it he writes? He writes a fabric. So when I read this, I called him up. I told him, I know that we don't put the parshas in a fabric. We put them in a little piece of leather. In the Shulchan Aruch, the Machaber writes, you put the little parshas either in a matlis or in leather. The thing is that he always called that matlis. I told him, what do we use to put the parsha in? Because we put something and then you put the string. He says, matlis. I told him, taich matlis. He says, leather. I says, no. I says, matlis means a fabric, taka. So the Rambam, now the problem with all this is that there should not be arguments in halacha l'moshe Sinai. And to minimize the machlokes, we who use a leather, the soifrim today call the leather a matlis. It doesn't really avoid my problem. It's like a cover-up almost. So that has to be further looked into. So the Rambam says you cover it with a matlis. The taich of matlis means a fabric. Now, could be taka the Rambam meant with leather. This is just there should not be an argument in halacha l'moshe Sinai. Number 4, around this matlis, you wind it with a seyar, with a seyar. We'll see exactly what's made out of with a hair. You got it. You got a parsha rolled up like a sefer Torah, misoifay l'tchilasay, a matlis, a little seyar, a hair, and then you put it into the compartment. Halacha l'moshe Sinai number 5. V'shiyu toifrim lehem begidin, that the boxes themselves, the top, the bias, and the titura, which is the bottom base, by the Rambam was very skinny, is sewn together with sinews of an animal. Halacha l'moshe Sinai number 6. V'she'oisim lehem ma'aboidus, that in the back of the titura, the Rambam doesn't use this word over here, but that's the word used in Shulchan Aruch. In the back of the base, you have a passageway because you have to put a strap through it, and that should be me'oir hachipui, the same oir that covered the bottom of the box. That should protrude enough that you can make a little handle out of it. Number 7, that the strap should be black. Guys, make the inference. What, in other words, all else, according to the Rambam, according to halacha l'moshe Sinai, does not have to be black. Black is to make it nicer. The only thing that has to be black is the outer part of the straps. And number 8, I'm saying this that many people with time, especially by the Shalyad, especially we who follow the Alter Rebbe's understanding that you have to bind the tefillin every day, means you have to make the knot every day. We actually open and close the knot. I know there's a whole discussion about it, but those of us who close the knot every day, that part of the Ritzua can get rubbed out. And understand that being black is even more important than the box being black, to fix it or to get new Ritzuas. And number 8, V'shiyah kesher shalem kesher yadua kitzuras dalid. And even though the Rambam doesn't make mention here, but the Rambam is going to mention later, he doesn't only mean the dalid. The Rambam always speaks first about the head. And in the hand, there should be a yud. Ulahoyer, that the people, not us, that have the box, it's not a box, it's 2 dalids. That's the way they understood it. It's a dalid in both directions, but you put a dalid and a dalid, you invert them, right? You make some sort of box. Anyways, let's go weiter. The Rambam now will unpackage all of these. But before he goes into the details, halacha beis, ketzad oisim tefillin shel rosh. I wish we had a mold. I remember when I learned as a bachar in Yeshiva Oir Elchanan, we had someone who came there. It was very beautiful to see hands-on today how they make it, or today you can look at Mastama online. Maybe Kevin is going to have a nice picture, but whoever's using a chayenu, the picture of the chayenu is the wooden mold. Loikchen eitz meruba. You get a cubic wooden block. So here the Rambam does say regarding the cube, Even though, like we mentioned, what's essential is that it should be the width and the length exactly the same. And here, even better is you should have the height should be the same as the width and the length. It's going to look taller because the titura also has height. But if the height was more but again, it doesn't have to be a cube. It has to be square, with length the same, but the height doesn't matter. Now, what are you doing this wood? He's speaking about not your tefillin, Yaakov. He's speaking about the box. You dig in the box, shloisha charitzim. What happens if you dig 3 charitzim? Look at your box. Guys, the white in your picture, the white in the picture is where you make that indentation. The wood that remains will be 4. Now, guys, if you have 4, this is the way it's going to look. If you have 4 pieces of wood sticking up, when you put leather on it, that will be the key. There's going to be an outer layer, Rabbi Chaim, on both sides. The point we're getting to is that we only use the mold to make the compartments in the box. But the outer part of the tefillin, which will be by the shorosh on the right side of the wearer, the shin of 3, the shin of 4 on the left side, that's out of the mold. That's going to be done manually. You could have also had an outer mold, and it would have worked also, but you don't do it that way. Gewaldig. The Rambam, when he wrote Kegoin Zed, the Rambam made a picture. As we know, we have certain manuscripts that the Ganovim stole. Today you have it in the Oxford Museum, some originals of the Rambam, and the picture that they put in the Chayenu is a copy of what the Rambam drew himself. Now, you take leather and you soak it in water. What happens when you soak leather in water? It becomes very malleable, if that's the word in English. Where's Rabbi Fishman? Yeah, Baruch Hashem, I got it. And the leather covers the wood. The Rambam is getting to the outer parts of your tefillin that you're wearing was never in a mold. It was around the mold. But what happens is that the oil is stuck between these charitzim. So what you end up creating, since you have 4 protrusions of wood up, you end up creating 4 holes or 4 compartments inside the head tefillin. Umacham shin, and oisai, you pluck it and you squeeze it while it's wet from both sides. It means you use the tweezers to pluck out, because you have to bring out now the shin from both sides. Acha oisen boy the most shin sheyesh loy shaloi shiroshin miyamin hamaniach tefillin, and 4 on mismail hamaniach. You see the beauty that Rambam, he writes Hamaniach. When you learn the Chazals and the Gemara, when we speak about soon the Seder of the Parshas, the Rashi, Rabbeinu Tams, we'll learn that right now. The confusion all began because the Braises, the Torah Shabbat Peh, before the Rambam did not write who's right, who's left. So that's clear. He's making it the right from the one who's wearing it. Halacha number 3. And you leave the leather in this mold until it gets dried, and then you remove the leather is on top. You got it because the outer part is outside. You have to take the mold from inside of it. Now, this leather box has 4 compartments, and it is in dir machnis and pasha b'chol bayis ubayis. Now, again, mashma, same leather, mashma, which is ideal. By the way, it's muhudir. You can look at your tefillin box. It says whether your box is from 1 piece of leather or whether it's from 2 pieces of leather, which is kosher. But the Rambam writes, it sounds like it's the same leather. You have some leftover leather, you flip it around. No, it's the base, the bottom. What covers the 4 parshas ideally is coming from the same original leather. And now, the bottom part we call Yaakov a titura, that's with 2 tufts, not with tesses. The toifrin oisem arba pinoisev, and you sew it from all 4 sides, which is exactly how we do it. But the bottom part isn't only to cover the compartments, you also have it protrude a little bit. The mabartom. Passageway. Halacha number 4. The ketzad oisem tefillin shel yad. Not you have the shins, nor do you need 4 compartments. Here the Rambam writes, V'yia gavoy ke'etzba, o yeser al zeh ma'at, o pachus ma'at. Interestingly, the Rambam only here writes about the size of the height or of the depth. He's not speaking about the size of the width or the length, but since he already wrote before that it doesn't have to be the same, more or less the same, so it's 1 finger breadth, or even less. That's tiny. Now I know that when you have the titura today, the titura ends up being because it protrudes. so it protrudes. If you add both protrusions, it's going to be the same amount. So if the bias itself is 1 finger, so with the width of the reel with the bottom, 2 fingers. How big is our tefillin? At least 4. That's the Alter Rebbe. Okay. Same thing. You have a piece of leather, and you leave it in there until it dries up. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to pluck it with tweezers. You're not making anything outside of it. You take out the leather from this mold, umaniach as arba haparshos, in the place where the wood was, which is 1 compartment. Boomba, there you have the makim ha'etz. Umachzin mixas oir melamata, the same thing. You leave it. You extend some leather, right, and you flip it around 180 like this. You have a bottom closing leather, and you sew it from all 4 sides. Umanichin in oir toiva. Again, you leave some sort of handle, some sort of and through which you make a hole. There's a passageway, which will be the place of the ritzuos. You don't make a hole. You just flip it in a way where automatically it's opened at the end. Halacha 8. Keitzad sidra parshias batfilin shaloreis. What's the order? Really, we have what we know today as 4 optional pairs of tefillin that many people wear. The first two, which is Rashi and Abbeinu Tam, the Rebbe strongly wants for every Yid today to put on Abbeinu Tam. And not only to put it on, but to put it on from their bar mitzvah. And not only to put it on from their bar mitzvah, but to put it on when min hagenu is to put on tefillin 2 months before the bar mitzvah. Already from then, right? We put on tefillin that Abbeinu Tam already prior to. Now, that was the whole thing. The Rebbe told Rav Moshe to put on Abbeinu Tam, and he did. The Rebbe Moshe wanted to have a sefer that's a Yirah Shamayim. The Rebbe gave the sefer, Rabbi Zirkin. Okay, now, Chevra, Rashi and Rambam is the same tefillin. When we say Rashi's tefillin, which is the halachically accepted tefillin, all else is beyond the letter of the law. This is the tefillin. Okay, say that. What's the roish? Machnis parsha achrein. You put in the final parsha. What does a final parsha mean, guys? Just to get used to the vocabulary. In the Torah, which one is written last? V'hayim Shemoya. You put in V'hayim Shemoya. Oh, Shema Shemaya, but Bayis Rishon. What does Bayis Rishon means? Shuhu al Yamin Hamaniach. Let me tell you how easy it is now. No, it's what's the question? What's the controversy? You have a stira in the Gemara. If you remember, we learned this. There's a stira in Braises. So one resolution will be, the Gemara says, is it Hamaniach? Is it the right of the person that's wearing it, or is it from the right of the person who's looking at the one who's wearing it? How do you not get confused? What did we learn before? That we make 2 shins. And the 3-legged shin, the 3-headed shin is from my right, miyamin hamaniach. What's the parsha closest to it? V'hayim Shemoya. Now, if that's on my right, which means my right is your left. Your left is perfect because it's the last parsha. And the Rambam, like Rashi, will go on the Seder now. Which means if someone is looking at the wearer, the Seder is as they're written in the Torah. From your perspective, the opposite Seder. First you put on the Shemoya. What comes one before in the Torah? What comes before of Ekev? Of Aschanan? You put in the Shema. What comes now that we're going backwards, right? V'hoya ki, which is the second one in Parshas Boy, and then in the V'kadosh li b'bayis revi. So the 4-headed Shema has right on the other side of the leather has the Kadosh li. Right? Shu l'smay laminiach tefillin. That is. Pasha, there's not enough time, but the footnotes did a great job. He explains exactly where the Rabbeinu Tam differed. He wants the 2 Bahoyas to be together, and then even more, if you're going to learn later in the footnotes, you'll chap what the Ravid is and what the Shemush Rabbah is. But anyways, what we learned right now is that from the perspective of the wearer, it's going to be opposite of the order of the Torah. Which is for the one who's looking, it's going to be exactly in the right Seder. So someone who's looking at the wearer would actually read it beseder of the Torah. That Rambam spelled it out. Whoever is looking at a chayenu, all you need to do, not to get confused, because you start looking at the box, the way the box is like upside down, flipped from all sides. Just put on the right of the picture the 3-headed shin. The 3-headed shin is V'hoyim Shemoya. The 4-headed shin is Kadosh li. That's all you need to know, and that's the way it is. Ve'im ha'chliv sidur zeh, psulois. So that's why we put on 2 pairs of tefillin, because according to one, the other one is pashat not kosher. It's not the mitzvah min hamufchar. The order has to be precise. Halacha vav. There's a lot on this. The Rashi put on Rabbeinu Tam. But whenever you have these arguments, so then everyone can follow their opinion. Probably not. Halacha number vav. Tefillah shel yad. So the same seder of tefillin shel roish, kaisvan ba'arba dafim. Dafim means columns on one leather, along like a sefer Torah. Al siduran ba'Torah kigoinzeh. And again, meaning that if you were to open it up, if you were to open and read it, the first one that the sefer is going to write is V'hayim Shemaya. Afterwards, he's going to write Shema Yisrael. Afterwards, he's going to write V'hayim Kiviyacha. Afterwards, he's going to write Kadosh Li, which is, since you're writing it from your perspective, from the way you're going to wear it, it's the opposite of the Seder and the Torah. And then you roll it up. However, if the Tefillin Shel Yad was written on 4 different parshas, 4 different parchments, right? They're going to be put in one. They're going to be put in one compartment. They're going to be rolled up together. That's fine. You don't have to glue them together. Halacha 7. Always when you roll them up, you have to roll them that when you open them up, you begin to read from the beginning of the parsha. Halacha 8. When you put them into the bottom, here we go to the matlis. Okay, let's touch matlis, and the Rama means a garment, because again, the fact that in Shulchan Aruch it says either a matlis or an oir, that means no, a matlis means even though the Sofrim call the leather a matlis. But you put them in a cloth, and on top of the cloth, you put a hair, and then you put them into the bayis, into the compartment. This hair should be either from an animal, domesticated animal, or from a non-domesticated animal. It has to be from a species that's tahira. It doesn't need to be from an animal that actually was slaughtered kahalacha. It can be from an avela, from a treif. The karchan b'sa'ad zanav ha'agolam, that they should use the tail of a calf.
Can you describe where the hair was wrapped to?
Huh?
Where the hair was wrapped?
The hair is wrapped around the matlis. So if this were to be lahavdol the parsha, so you roll up the parsha, then you take another matlis and you put it over here. Then around the matlis you have a hair. Maybe Kevin will wake up over here and he's going to put a picture, even though I have a different. Okay, good. Weiter.
Is that the hair that comes out in the front?
No, that's not the hair that comes in the front. But if you look in footnote 24, there's not enough time that I'll peek Kabbalah that in the compartment itself, the hair that's going around V'hayim Shemaya should protrude a little bit from the compartment. Okay. Weiter. Yeah. Halacha 9. Now, when you tie the tefillin together, what are we tying? You're taking the bottom cover, the oir, which we call the titura. It has to cover the compartment. If not, the parchments will fall out. Ein toifrin ella. Here you have to use sinews, again, from either a behema or a chaya, from a species that's tohira. Va'afilu min avelos l'treif shalahem. Loikchen, what's the meaning? You take these sinews from the heel of the behema of the chaya, and they are white in color. So Rabbi Chaim, the white that protrudes, I think at least, is from the sinews. The footnote 24 is that if you open up, there'll be one hair that's sticking out from V'hayim Shemaya. So there's hairs versus sinews. Okay. The imim kashim, now sinews are very hard. It's difficult to use hard threads, so then you soften them. You take stones and you bang them, and it softens them. Which is the way you make flax usable as threads. You have to spin them, you have to twist them. Halacha number 10, when you're going to sew your tefillin closed, you have to make sure that it's a perfect square. Furthermore, it's in a widely accepted halacha, or halacha l'mesh mesina. Halacha here means a minig. That sheyu b'chalsat shalish tefillas, that every side should have 3 stitches. 3 stitches means from the top until the bottom. Take a look at your tefillin. You'll see 3 lechalach. 3, 3, 3, 3, 12. Ad sheyu hakol shtei mesrei tefillas. Bein shal yad, bein shal roish. And if you only made a total of 10 or a total of 14, that is okay. No, it's the halacha. Ravachas doesn't mean the halacha l'meisha misina. That's essential. It means a widely accepted custom. It has to go mitzat ha'elyon to the tzad ha'tachten. Let's go weiter. Halacha yudalef. Tzorach sheyagia hecharet shel tefillin shel roish ad makam yatefer. Now these compartments of the tefillin shel roish, look inside your tefillin, you see a groove. I know that they put the beautiful black paint, ink, so you only see the groove. But you know what? It's not glued together. There's actually, it's very hard. Our tefillin are great, but they have to be separated, ideally, all the way down to the titura. If you were to want, you can open them up. People who have a very delicate tefillin, as they get older, they push it begin to open, which is not ideal. If they are separated, but the separation doesn't go all the way down to what we call the titura, it's also going to be kosher as long as that it is discernible that they are, even though it doesn't go through the total height of the tefillin, fresh taste, it's also okay as long as you can see the 4 separate compartments. But if it's not discernible, that means it's such a little separation that you can't even see that, and it doesn't extend the total height, then it's not going to be kosher. Guys, the tefillin that we buy, it goes all the way down to the bottom. Just we have better tefillin, we have bigger tefillin, it's harder, so it stays together. And then the ink, all you think is there's a little indentation. It's much more than that. It's pashat separated. It's necessary to pass the cord or to pass a thread between each group to make sure that lahavdil bein bayis labayis, which is what Seifrim do before they give it to you, before they sell it to you, before they paint it on top with the ink. And the common is to take the sinews that you're using to sew the tefillin clothes. Those will be the sinews that the Sefer will use to pass through each compartment prior to sewing it up. Halacha Yud Beis. Now we're moving from the asiyasim of the boxes, tzitzis, to the asiyasim of the ritzuas. Halacha Yud Beis. Some people love this. I want you to know. It's good to chapter, and whoever likes this as a yeshiva bacher should be afforded more hands-on. It's pashat geschmack. It's part of Torah. You have to also, part of it is hands-on. Keitzad oisim haritzuas. How thick should the ritzua be, Yaakov? So again, we wear tefillin only once. Beautiful. That you wear it the whole day. I don't know if it was done for practical reasons, but you know how skinny it can be? It only has to be, the width has to be the length of a barley corn. I don't know how many millimeters that is. If it's that width, you're good. But the width cannot be the width of a barley corn. No, that's too little. It has to be the length of a barley corn. If it's wider, it's good. No, the Rambam doesn't even write, it's Miram Mufchar. All he's saying is that this shear is not less, it could be more. How long does it have to be? That's a whole different thing. The goal is that it should be enough, long enough, that it should go around your head. You should be able to make the kesher the dalet, and you're going to have straps extending from both sides. We want for the strap to come either to the navel, to the belly button in my English, or a bit above. And really, it's important that the right side should go lower than the left side with a lot of, until the belly button, or a little bit higher. Really, it should go longer. As our tefillin, they extend even further. That's the head tefillin. The oirach of the tefillin shel yad, kedei shetakev es hazroi v'yikshu memenu akeshen. Because their concept is that not even though we're going to put on the tefillin on the upper arm, right, on the upper arm, but since we know that we should have the ritzua wrapped all the way around your lower arm, including your palm, including the middle finger 3 times, it should have enough for that. And not only should it go down until the middle finger, but that you should be able to wrap it around 3 times the middle finger. There's a whole discussion because what we do is we put one on the top, then one in the middle, one back on the top. So the top part of the middle finger will have 2 wines. Should they be separated? Which al pi Kabbalah they should be separated, which makes it a little bit difficult when people are young yeshiva bachrim and we have the beautiful thick ritzuas. There isn't enough bone to separate. And then the Rebbe, that's a whole thing, Al Pi Kabbalah, did not separate it. Just the Lahoyd, whoever's aware of that. And now, if the ritzua was even longer than that, that's fine. No, it should be, according to the Rambam, the right navel, the left a little bit shorter, or longer. And the shayad, you should be able to go to the middle finger or longer.
Doesn't mention 7 times.
Doesn't mention how many times over here. Very good. Halacha Yud Gimel. Umachnis ritzua shel roish b'toiv v'shala. The ritzua is going to be put through what we call the ma'barta, the passageway, which is in the bottom, the back of the tetura. Umakev b'midas roishay. How long will it be until you make the dalet? Everyone's head has a different size. And guys, we have to be careful. Most people have the head tefillin way too big. Way too big. The koisher keshen meruba. Kimin Dalet. So here, the Rambam writes, it's a square knot. Maybe it sounds like the Ashkenazim. Square. Anyways, we know exactly what it looks like. The Rambam Nach writes that this keshed, every Talmud Chacham has to learn how to make. Then he adds that he can't describe it in writing. To describe this in writing is impossible. So he's not going to attempt. I want to say that in the Tamei HaMenhagim, many people have that sefer. If you want to learn how to make these tefillins, so with computers, so there, Pashad, you can see how you make. We also have our minig there, both the kesher shel yad and the kesher shel roish. And it's important for people to know how to make it, especially to know how to make it bigger and smaller. Everyone has to know how to do that because, as we'll see, it can be too big. It's not going to be kosher. And v'chein shel yad kosher kesher kimin yud. What type of yud? The tia haratzua shel yad oil v'yeredes v'seicha kesher. We want for the strap to be able to go through some loop in the retzua in order kadei sheyarche v'yekatzer v'eish yirtze liksher es yodei. It's mashma from the Rambam that the knot should be the way we have our knot, and that is that you can push it open and close a part of the knot. Okay, halacha yud dalet. Haratzua shel tefillin. These straps bein shel roish bein shel yad. Yaakov Pneim, the outer part should be Pneim Achitzonim should be Shechoirem Nivenoah. V'zeh halacha l'Moshe Sinai, to the exclusion of the boxes. Aval ha'choyre ha'ritzua is the other side of the ritzua is hoyel mipnimhem, since they are not going to be facing outwards. They may be yerukos. Guys, I know what does yeruka normally mean? Yellow or green. Yeruka means pale, because they're not, when you have undyed leather. What does it look like? You can call it light yellow or light brown. That's the meaning here of Yeruka. It can be mamish pale white, and it's kosher. One color it cannot be, and that's only like midrabanan. It cannot be red. Why? Because if what will someone think that you're bleeding? It's going to be a ganai, it's going to be disgusting. No one should think that you have a wound and it's bleeding into your tefillin. It's ganai. What's important is that whatever color the bottom side of the ritzua is, it should match the color of the bias. Again, the bias doesn't have to be black, so you're using the same leather. It's going to be leather. It's going to be the same color. In Yeruk, if it's going to be pale, it's going to be pale. If it's going to be mamish white, it's going to be white. Now the Rambam adds v'noi hu l'tfilin sheyiu kulam shchayros. What does it mean? Haketzitza. Guys, it's very important, this Rambam. Now I know that in my new 50-year-old tefillin, I think I got both side black. People are not medagdik on that, but that's the Rambam. The Rambam says his approach, shachar has to be the outer part of the ritzua. Whatever the underside of the strap is, it should match the color of the box. Everyone today has black boxes. The Rambam is saying this is a noy, this is a mitzvah hidur, is to have the underside also black. Halacha tezvav, ha'oirish ha'mechapen b'yisat tefillin, v'shoyz na ritzua. Again, who oirish shal behemer chaya oif tohoiden, even oif, va'filu nevelus utrefer shalahem. And if you made it ma'oir tameim, you made it a chveis from a horse, or shechiper tefillin bezov, even if you wanted to beautify it and you put gold on it, pisulais va'oir haritzuah. Now, unlike the box, the ritzuahs has to have ibud lishma. When it was stand l'shem kedushas tefillin. Aval ba'oirish mechapen b'oim, the outer box ain't tzarich ibud klal. What's the advantage? Anything that doesn't need to be tanned at all. In other words, you can take hide that's untanned to use for the box. If you choose to tan it, it doesn't have to be lishma, because the whole tanning is not needed. Afilu aso matzah, guys, matzah, it's funny, not matzah of Pesach. Matzah means leather that was not processed, it was not put in the salt, it was not put in the kemach. Won't smell that good. It's going to be kosher. And furthermore, there's so much more about the ritzua. Imagine, the ritzua has to be tanned, and it has to be painted black. That's it. Halacha tezayin. Ein oisen tefillin el Yisrael. Why? You can ask, if you don't have to do the ibud lishma, let a non-Jew do it. No, that's nishtemes. Because on the head tefillin, what do you have? You have the shins. And the writing, we learned yesterday, can only be done by a yid. Only those who are commanded to wear kshartam are qualified to write it. Like we explained. Okay, and by the way, and then we go further. Since one part of the asiyasim, which is the shin, has to be done by a yid, not a goy, or only by those who are mechuyev to make it, so we're not machalik ben asiya la asiya. So any other part of the making of the tefillin even not the shin, also can only be done by a yid. Which will be a woman, for example, because she's not mechuyev to wear it. She should not be one, or whoever's not mechuyev to wear it does not make it. Halacha Yud Zayin. Tefillah shel roish, ein oisim shel yad. Can you take a box that was made for the shel roish? I know we don't have a shin, but can you take away the shin and then use it for the yad? The answer is no. Because now you see one of the reasons that we spoke to Rebbe Shita, but one of the other reasons that people give classic, why does the Rambam always speak about the head before the hand, even though no one puts on the head before the hand, is because there's more kedusha. A strap cannot be later used for the strap of the tefillah shel yad if you already wore them. But tefillah shel roish that was never worn at all, and you had in them the straps of shel roish. You want to, for whatever reason, change them. Not zalachzid only yad mutter. The ketzar oisin toila Allah. Now I'm sorry. They're speaking about the tefillah. Not only the straps, even the box. The box has 4 compartments. So what do? The yad only has 1 compartment. So you can manipulate it with adding more leather that's going to extend the divisions and make it into a smaller 1 compartment. Inside, you can make it into a 1 compartment as long as it was not used yet. What happens if the stitches are undone? If there were 2 stitches, one juxtaposed the other, or a total of 3 stitches around the 12 that we said, ideally 12, then the tefillin is puzzle. Because what are we afraid? You know what we are afraid of? Guys, our boxes are much sturdier. Once the stitches are getting undone, it means the whole thing is falling apart, the whole thing is going to tear. That you have the chashash it's going to tear is when the boxes themselves are old. So once the stitches fall apart, it's going to tear. But if the boxes are new, kolzman shepnei tavlan kayamois, tavlan means the outer compartment, the oir habatim. The oir habatim is, it looks good, then they're kosher even though it's partially unstitched. How do you define new and old? Huh? So he says, whenever you hold on to some of the leather, does the rest rip or does the rest come along? Simchas Torah, if you can pick up a yid and make him do a tumble sauce, that's a young guy. In other words, as long as you don't fall apart when you start manipulating the other part. Shenikra tifrei. If you pick up some of that which tore, it means you're picking up a part that tore and you're picking it up from there and it doesn't tear more, that's called new. That's chadashes. But if final halacha you test what happens if the strap rips? Number 1 is you may not fix it. Take it out and get another strap. The leftover parts are puzzled to be used again. Actually, but 1 second. What happens if I have a very long? We said that straps can be very long. By mitzvah bachram, they end up wrapping it. There's a whole mountain on their hands. What happens if the bottom part ripped? It's okay. If what remained meets the minimum requirement, is good. The width should be the length of a barley corn, and the length should be as olive. Make sure that the black painted part should always be facing upwards. Al pi Kabbalah, people had it flipped over, they would make a fast day. And with this we conclude the hands-on halacha gimel. And now, Chavra with Simcha, I know it's a bit late, but we'll get there. Pedek Revi has 26 halachas. Now we're going to learn the place of the tefillin. Where do you place it on the body? What time do you put on the tefillin? And the activities that may and or may not be done while you would wear tefillin, and then they would wear tefillin the ganze day until Rambam, until the Shkia. Halacha Aleph, Chavra Freilach, Heichan, Manichan Tefillin Shorosh. Where do you put it? So on the front, always the Rambam speaks about the head first. Manichan, Oisamel, Kotkot, put it on your skull. But which part of the skull? Shu Soif Haseish, Shekeneged upon him, where your hairline it goes until the front of your face. The Rebbe always spoke out, this is the hairline for people when they were young, when they still had hair. Many people become bald, but many people have a receding hairline. You can put it where their hairline used to be. If you also know that everyone, when they're born, there's a place, there's a place where you can feel the pulsations of the body. In the opening that Hashem made when a baby is born on the head, that's more or less going to be especially when we have bigger tefillin, if you go to the front of the hairline, the back of the tefillin will be on top of that. The point is, it's high up. None of it should be going beyond your hairline. None of it should be on top of your forehead. And also be'emtza. What did we learn when we spoke about the teva? We emphasized that Rambam's be'emtza means from side to side. Same thing over here. Be'emtza clearly doesn't mean front back. It means from side. It means beinenecha. That's the be'emtza. Kedeshiu beinayinayim. And v'yu akeshed. Now where do you put the back knot? Many people put the back knot too low. It's a mistake. So if you can feel the end of your skull. There's a bone. On top of that should be your dalit. V'yu akeshed begoiva ha'oirif. Not under your bone. Shehu soif. It should be on the end of your skull. And for that, make your knot of the tefillin smaller. And that's why he says that every person should know how to make the knots bigger. And you go you have a big-headed person, or you have a small-headed person, you have to know quickly how to change it back and forth. Halacha base. The shel yad, the hand tefillin. You put it on your left hand, obviously not for people that are the big chachamim here, that are lefties. That's a sign of great chachma, right, Yaakov? But I'm saying for most people that write with the right, you put it on your weaker hand. Where al-ha-kiboidus. You know what kiboidus means? Your muscle on the upper arm. That's the bulging flesh of the arm.
Bicep.
The bicep. Thank you, Yashir Koyach. Shebein pedek l'kasev, ubein pedek l'zeroya. Okay. Again, the bicep and not the lower arm. In other words, it should be, what's the simon? That when you put your elbow down, we want for the tefillin then, for people who are righties, it should be opposite your heart. Here you'll see, that's not the first time, just to point it out, that the singular of tefillin is tefillah. Gives us another appreciation of we're being bound to God. That's tefillah, miloshin, being connected. Even begashmi. Halacha 3. If a person puts the tefillin on his palm, which is the way the tzedukim understood it, or al roishoy, al mitzchoy, but they put it too far down, so it's on one's forehead. Harei zeh derech tzedukim. Furthermore, tefillin around like a nut. Guys, we just learned this recently. So what did we learn when we spoke out the Gemara? It doesn't mean it's circular. That's not what it means. We know it has to be mirobas. That's halacha l'moshe misinai. Around ka'egus means that the bottom part of the titura, the part that's laying on your head and your hand, we have it flat. If they would make it rounded like a nut, that you have to be goydis. It's a sakana on the head, because since it's on that place on the head where even though we are adults, halavai, we should be adults, there's a weakness in that part of the skull. If it's rounded and something gets knocked, so then it can go in. And the ein ba mitzvah. The Rambam is not even speaking about making round tefillin. That we addressed in the last chapter. Left-handed people, they say, are very artistic and intelligent. So maniach tefillin, they put the tefillin on the right hand. Shehu smoiloi shaloi. Now what happens if you have a shoylet b'shtei yodav? Danny Fishman would say now the word in English. I'm not going to attempt because I won't pronounce it correct. Then maniach. Then if you write with both hands, you put it on your left hand to be more aligned with the majority of the people. The place is from oral tradition, because the rest of you look inside the Chumash, you don't see that al yodecha pas yodai, beinenecha al kodkodai. That's why we learned that God told Moshe the pasuk, and then he told him what it means. And that's called.
You don't do both?
Huh?
Suffix, you don't do both?
There's no suffix. We know God told Moshe. Not a suffix. Since we really wanted al lavavecha, halacha dalet. Elama, we are binding the weaker part of us, the way we just spoke out today. Bekitzer, that's the concept of the skafia. The binding, not a sapcha, it's binding. It's even though my heart is not yet in my domain, I have the power, and we have many good midas that should not be bound. It's the left-sided midas. Halacha dalet. Tefillah shel roish. Eina makeh shel yad. V'shel yad. Eina makeh shel roish. It's two separate mitzvahs. Mipnei shem shtei mitzvahs. Zula atzma v'zula atzma. V'keitzad mevarchim. It's amazing. Even here, the Rambam is still going to mention the head first. Al shoroish mevanach hashek rishon mitzvah al mitzvahs tefillim, not lahaniach tefillin shel roish, because the mitzvah is, like we said, it should be on the head, not to put it on. On the hand, you make the bracha hashek rishon mitzvah lahaniach tefillin. Gevaldik. That you make two brachas when you're only putting on one or the other. So you take two brachas. But if you're putting on both, then you only make one bracha. What bracha are you going to make? Now, you put on the hand first. So you're going to make the lehaniach and the kosher shel yad. Here he has no option. Here he has to write the shel yad first. V'achar kach maniach shel rosh. When you remove it, you always, when the head is on, the hand is on. And not the other way around. So first the hand, then the head. When you remove it, first remove the head, and then remove the hand. Action is more important than understanding. Nasev and nishma. Halacha 6. Mi sheberach laniach tefillin, and he put on tefillin shel yad. And the Rambam just said you only make one bracha. Yesh koyach. That's if you don't make a hefsek. So then, also you can't say anything, even to respond shalom to your Rebbe, until you put on the tefillin shel rosh. And if you had any conversation, first of all, hanezu aveda. Number 2, v'tzarech levarach baracha shniya, which is al mitzvahs tefillin, and then you put on the tefillin shel rosh. Halacha number 7, tefillin. The Rambam paskins, guys, we don't paskin this way. The Rambam holds kol zman shemanichem levarach leim. Every time you put it on, you make a bracha. Again, you have to appreciate the whole pedic. They wore tefillin the whole day. When you go into a latrine, you have to take it off. The other activities, you have to take it off. So imagine, even if you know you're going to put it back on, according to the Rambam, you take it off for whatever reason. Every time you put it on, you make another bracha. So there's another thing. You have to know the bracha tefillin shel rosh, because even if you did not make a conversation, which is no one does that, you should not. Ideally, don't do it. But let's say you needed to take off the tefillin shel rosh for a moment. When you put it back on, you make the bracha tefillin shel rosh. That's the kol zman. Anytime you put it on, you make a bracha. Va'afilu choylitz v'loivish kama palman b'yoyim. That's not the way we paskin, but we have a couple of minutes. Let's keep on moving. V'chol mitzvahs kulan. When do you make the bracha? Like any other brachas mitzvahs, you make the bracha right prior to doing it. Lefikach tzarich levarach al tefillin shel yad. Right immediate prior doesn't mean when it's still in the box. Or place it already on your, what do you call that? On your bicep, on your kiboides. And like we said, it's mashma again that you would actually make the knot. You would make the knot. And right prior to making the knot, you make the bracha, lahaniach tefillin. Shekeshiroshan zu hi asiyasan. Halacha ches, kishachoylot zadam tefillah latznim ekli. When you take it off to put it away, lo yaniach shel yad melmata v'sholosh melmayla. The bags that they had were not wide. They did not put the tefillin side by side the way we do. They put it one on top of the other. Very narrow, long bags. So if you're going to put the shel yad in the bottom of the bag, meaning the shorosh is going to be on top of the bag, which means tomorrow morning when you put on the tefillin, which one will you encounter first? If it's narrow, you're going to encounter the head first. In order to put on the hand first, you're going to go over, you're going to be mavir ala mitzvahs. Don't do that. You cannot put on the head first. You're going to have to go over it. Based all on that, the psak that are two separate mitzvahs. If it would be one mitzvah, it wouldn't be bothering me. One mitzvah means each one is a half a mitzvah. Each one is a separate full mitzvah. You're being ma'avid ala mitzvah. Ela mitzvah shotave liyadei shel adam tchila. You have to make sure the hand one is the first one that you encounter. Bahu misaseg lefikach. Therefore, what's the solution? If you have these narrow, long bags, put the yad lamayla. What do we do nowadays? Now we have a wide bag, and the ideal is to put the yad tefillin in the left side of the bag. Why? Because a person who's a righty, when they use the right hand, since the right hand is to the right of the body, not towards the center, whether you are aware or not, when you extend your right hand, it goes a little bit to the left, because you're putting it towards your center. That's the nature. My right hand goes towards yours left. So if I'm going to the bag in front of me, when I put the tefillin shel yad on the left side of the bag, that will be naturally the one that I will encounter first. Based on that logic, many people suggest that we who wear the way that Rebbe wants, everyone should wear Rashi Rabbeinu Tam, since we put on Rashi before Rabbeinu Tam, so in the larger bag, the Rashi should also be on the left and the Rabbeinu Tam on the right for the same logic. Halacha 9. Klei shechira laniach by tefillin, a container that was designated. Number 1, guys, these are 2 steps, and you used it. Then it becomes sanctified, and now you may not use it for anything else, for divrei chayil. But if you only designated it, but you never used it yet, or you use something temporarily, now if you have a tefillin bag, you don't have to designate it. But if you have a bag, you happen to use it without designation, one or the other, and it's chol. Another rule, for also litlis tefillin, you may never hang the tefillin, not by the strap, not even by holding the tefillin. Other when you're putting it on. But stam, to hold one part, to hold the other part. I'm sorry, but you are allowed to hang the bag right, that the tefillin are munachim. Pshas hanochasim, that's befedish. You are allowed to hang it. Huh? That's right. Everyone has a good halacha yud. Zman hanachas tefillin. When do you put on the tefillin? Bayom v'lo b'layla. This is a drasha. Miyamim yamima doesn't mean days, but al pi the drush it means from day to day, from the daytime of the day. Chukah refers to mitzvahs tefillin. That's number one. Do we paskin that way? No, right? We paskin that tefillin is being by yom midorai. The Rama paskins that midorai said tefillin is only by day. Number two, v'chein shabbos is yomam toivim. We paskin like this. That's why it's a zman grama. Einam zman tefillah, because it says lo'ois regarding tefillin, and shabbos and yomam toivim are also called an ois. And let's go further. We have to have two witnesses, and the bris milah is one witness. So all a yid needs is another witness. So Shabbos, you already have two. Shabbos and the bris and Shabbos. During the weekdays, you have to put on tefillin. So even though by Hilchas Tefillah, the Rambam never mentioned Mishay Kishayakir, there it was Alois, he mentioned ornates. Mishayira es chaveroi berichak arba amas v'yakireu. So Mishayakir doesn't mean ben tchelis lalavin. Mishayakir means when you can recognize your friend. Ad shetishka hachamo. Halacha Yud Aleph. So it's from Mikishayakir until Shkia. Mi sheniach tefillin kodim shetishka chama and v'chashcha olav. Now you put it on before, but now it's already dark. Afilu hein olav kol halayla mutar. The only thing that you may not is sleep in tefillin. But since you put it on by the day, it's like mutar. The Rambam is going to say later not to do it. But the ein marim davar zel rabim. You don't say this in public, even though we just said it in public, but you don't say this in public. Because now we're learning Torah, that's different than giving a psak. You tell people, don't put on tefillin during the night. Why? This is practical. One of the halachas we're going to learn in a moment is Yaakov Gufnaki. Gufnaki means that even many people are not mindful, everyone is different. But including not only what's in your mind and your heart, but even the physical body has to be clean. Venting ear is something that happens to people, and that's a big disgrace for the tefillin. And at night, it happens more often, especially when people go to sleep. So therefore, so that we tell people take it off. When Shkia, Ella Yachlas Uwais if you put on the tefillin after Shkia, over belav. The word shamarta, shamar pen, right, is like al, it's like a lav. Halacha yud beis. If a person is traveling and tefillin b'roishoi, what's the issue? The issue is that even though you can take it off and put it in your hand, if you don't have a proper bag, we are afraid it can fall out of your hand. Add or. So first of all, if you're traveling and it's shkia, we just said better to take it off. But if taking it off would mean that you'll be carrying it exposed in your hand with the fear of it dropping, or if it's Shabbos, Shabbos is a whole new topic. Shabbos means I may not carry on Shabbos. Wearing tefillin, like wearing clothing, is not called carrying. So there I don't have an option. So you put your hand on it, cover it, even though he said before that malam de mesakoil not to have tefillin on them by night. Here you don't have an option. So people say, what are you talking about? Leaving in the Beis HaMedrash? The Beis HaMedrash, like we just learned over Shabbos, by Hilchas Tefillah, that they had the repetition of Maidev Friday night. The Batei Medrashim were out. They were out of the city. And you didn't have the locks and the security that you have today. Didn't have that. So it was a place that people would go in there and Svarim, if they took, okay, tefillin is already more expensive, so there was a fear that it's going to be stolen. That's why you didn't have an option then of leaving it in the Beis HaMedrash. So again, maniach yodei alei matzah megel lebeis. So this is on Shabbos, on Friday night for chayletz. So you only gave you a heter to wear the tefillin, even though Shabbos is not as man tefillin. You put it on before Shabbos. Right? Truth is that even if you find it on Shabbos, for it not to be stolen, you can put it on. But the Rambam is not speaking about this over here. Don't walk home. Walk to the first place that's safe. If when you enter your village, you have your chaver's house that's closer, leave it over there. Manicham sham. Bottom line is, if you put it on before and you're leaving it on for its own safety, that it's mutar. Halacha 13. Who's patim mikri shema? For example, women, avadim, right? Zman gerama, not tefillah. Kriya shema, pturim not tefillin. Why? Because it's zman gerama. There's double zman gerama l'Rambam. Bayoim v'loy balayla. Weekdays, not Shabbos, is in Yom Tovim. Katan sheyedei lishmar tfilav. If he knows how to guard the tefillin, meaning he can wear it, making sure that his body remains clean. He knows not to enter the lavatory with it. He knows not to fall asleep with it. Then aviv loikeach loy tefillin kedei lachan chay b'mitzvahs. The Rebbe points out that the Rambam always, when he speaks about chiyuvim on a cotton, of course it's mitzat chinuch, includes the cotton in the chiyuv, as we'll see later by tzitzis, right? The cotton is chayiv midrabanan to wear tzitzis. The only place where the Rambam bechinuch never puts the cotton included in the chiyuv is only on the father, is by tefillin. First of all, there's a practical thing. Tefillin costs money. You can't be mechayiv even midrabanan a cotton, because who's going to buy the tefillin for him? You understand? Okay, and let's leave it at that. Choyla ma'ayim, someone who has intestinal issues, he cannot guard his, he cannot hold in his bodily needs. He's exempt from tefillin. However, a person who's in pain, a person who's disturbed, cannot concentrate his thoughts, he's also parted from tefillin. Because the concept is not only gufnaki. It's not only gufnaki, it's even gufnaki. You want for the moyach to be naki, for the heart to be naki. If a person is very preoccupied, they cannot focus to be connected about the holy things. And that's another vart that the Rebbe says that the reason why you cannot include a cotton in the chinuch in the rabbanon, because hesach hadas is something that we can only expect of a adult. Kohanim b'shas avodah and Leviyim b'shas oimrim shir al haduchan, and the Yidin b'shas ma'amodan b'mikdash. They are pturim min ha-mitzvah, min ha-tefillah, u'min ha-tefillin, because of the rule, ha'oisik b'mitzvah, pater min ha-mitzvah. However, they are allowed to. The kohen's yad may not even wear the shal yad, because there's an issue of a chatzitza between the kohen's hand and his begadim. Halacha yudalet, chayv adam lamashmish b'tefillin kol zman shem olav. You have to constantly touch it. You have to touch your tefillin to remind yourself you're wearing it. Shelo yasiach data mehem. Afilu rega echad, you cannot have hesach hadas. Shekedushasan gedoyla mikedushas hatzitz. Wow, the tzitz has only one shame. Yudkei vavkei. Ve'elu yesh behem echad ve'esrim shame shel yudkei, a side of Elikim, and that's only on each set, because the shel roish has 21, the shel yad has the same other 20. That's 42. Yudkei vavkeis. Halacha tezvav. Tefillin, srichin, gufnaki. So this was about hesach hadas, which is something more ruchniistic. Now we're going to go to something more gashmi. Make sure not to vent ear. Therefore, asur lishan bahem, loishinas keva, v'loishinas aray. Ella, if you're sleeping aray, now guys, when people are sleeping aray, whatever that means, a person is able to decide not to vent any ear. The problem with aray is that a person can go from aray into keva. So if you get into a body position that's very uncomfortable, you will not go into keva. Then you can do it. While it's on you, you're covering it to be respectful. As long as you don't have your wife with you, then you are allowed to sleep a sleep that's aray, that you know will not become a deeper sleep. How? Put your hands in between your knees. Right, Mela, you good yeshiva bacher, you put your hands on the table. Who can you sleep? Hours. But if you tell the guy, you can sleep in the zal, you're tired, just don't put your head on the table, put your head in between your knees. This guy won't be able to sleep for a long time. If a person has his tefillin wrapped around his hands, which means, chassan, he took it off, but he's afraid someone is going to steal it. Holding it in the hand is not an option, because what happens if you hold something in hand and you fall asleep? Falls out. But if you tie it on your hand, not ketzdukim to wear it, just it should be safe, and here you're good. Mutar lishan bahem. Even shivas keva. Ve'eino oichel behem ela chilas aray. That's eating, guys, when you're wearing it. Avolim nichnas l'sudas kva. What should you do? Cholson. Manicham al shulchan. At sheyitel yodov. What sheyitel yodov, guys? Not for hamoitzi. Yitel yodov means my machroinim. Now, you know what? You want to wear them while you're benching. If you're wearing tefillin and you have to go to the Beis HaKisei, so practical, where are you going to put it down? Can't put it on the floor. People didn't go around with the bag the whole day. So these latrines had walls. It was a public bathroom. The outer wall was facing the Rosh Hashanah. The walls then were made with a lot of cracks and crevices, which like shelves. Don't put it on that shelf. Someone is going to steal it. Someone might steal it. It's not properly guarded. So what should you do? What should you do? So he says, even if you only have to pass urine, you can't wear tefillin. First of all, 4 amas away from the bathroom. Like we mentioned, those days the bathroom smelled very bad, so the dinim of the bathroom also included near the bathroom, unlike today. If you have no place where to put it, roll them in your baguette, so there's something covering them, and hold them in your right hand against your heart. Make sure that no straps are protruding, and if it's protruding a drop, it doesn't matter. It should not protrude more than a tefach, and then go and relieve yourself. And when you leave, you have to go away for amas, and then you can wear them. That you can do the above is only if you are going to a Beis HaKisei Kavua. Let's learn pshat that a fixed public latrine will be a place in which people sit down when they urinate, which is better. Why is it better? Not now, then. Because when a person stands and they urinate on the ground, some of the urine will spritz back on one's feet, and there's an issur for a person to go with droplets of urine on their feet exposed in the public, because the observer will think that they don't have a koyach to push the urine out of their body, which means that they are unable to father children, which means their children are mamzedim. So therefore you have to wash the urine off your feet. You can't clean the urine off your feet when you have tefillin in your hand. So all of the above is allowed because Beis HaKisei Kavua, because you're sitting. That's the way we're going to learn pshat. Amen. But if you have a Beis HaKisei Arai, which is a place where people would urinate standing, which means there's going to be netzoitzes gespritzt on your feet, because the problem is not disrespect in the bathroom. The problem is you using your hands that's holding the tefillin to wash off the urine off your feet. Then you have no option. You have to give them to a chaver to guard them. The Rambam is writing this now. You should know that it's not about the kavua. It's about you have to sit down. When a person sits down, that's when all of the urine leaves the body. Now another detail. If you have very moist ground, moist ground means that when your urine hits it, it doesn't spritz back. That's okay. Then you can urinate when you're standing. If also another, then even if the ground is hard, if a person is urinating on an incline, so then also it's not going to spritz back to your feet. Now that we established that even biblically you cannot put on your tefillin after shkia, so you have to relieve yourself prior to shkia, but there won't be enough time. When are you allowed to put them on your hand, even though in a respectful way, because you're going to put them back on today? But if you're not putting it back on today, here you're taking them off already for the whole night. Put them bekelyon, put them in their container. Now the container has to have a tefach size. I know it's late. Bekitzer, any container that was made for that article is not really called a container. It's called an extension of. You want to put it in a container. So if the container has a tefach, then it has a din of an oil. And there, even though it was made for the tefillin, the oil is chaytzitz. Then you can take it into the bathroom. Or if you take it into a keli that was not made for it, even if it doesn't have a tefach. And you are afraid that that is going to be stolen. Guys, we do this today. When people go to an airport, I mean, it's not only in one case. So you have your tefillin bag, but it's in your luggage. The luggage is not made for the tefillin. You can take it into the bathroom, it's going to be stolen. Halacha chaf. If a person entered the latrine while they're wearing the tefillin, what should you do? Don't take it off right now. Cover it with your hand. Amud Arisha means whether you're urinating, number one, or number two, the first expulsion of the waste of the body, if a person is going to stop that, it's very dangerous. So first finish that, and then take it off. Then leave and take it off. Then go back in and finish doing what you need to do. Because if you're going to be mafsik ba'amud arishin, imagine a person is having a marital relation while they're wearing the tefillin. So we spoke out, the tefillin was very little, they wore it the whole time, they got habituated, the head obviously has a chadas. So you can only remove it not when you finish you have to wash your hands and remove it. Because while a person is engaged in Tashma Shamita, Hayadayim Askaniyas, and a person might have touched Mamakim Ha Tinoif. Halacha Chaves. If a person enters a bathhouse, so like this, you have the 3 rooms. The outer room where people are already standing, dressed, you can leave your tefillin on. Not you can put on the tefillin over there. The middle room where some people are dressed, some people are not dressed. Einoi choylitz tefillin, einoi choylitz means you're not mechuyev to take it off, but you can't put it on. And in the inner room, you have to take off your tefillin. No need to say you may not put it on. Halacha 23, you may not go into a cemetery that's called loya glarash with your tefillin on your head. Mashman, the hand that's covered, it's okay. Or outside the cemetery, and a person may not wear his tefillin and wear his garments. It's not respectful. People that are going in the third world countries, you usually have to carry something, then you have to take off the tefillin and show the head until you get rid of that pekala. Now, vafilu mitpachas, even a handkerchief. If you're putting it on your head, don't put it on your head when you're wearing tefillin. But the hat, or what we call a yarmulke, that we can put because it's not covering the tefillin of the head. Halacha chav dalid. Now, by the way, there are certain times that we may even cover in shul head. A person is in musaf in the shul and they have to cover they're saying kesed. Then you can use your head, but it's not ideal. You do that just not to have to take it off. Halacha 24. Bayis yesh by tefillin or a sefer Torah asur. Bayis means a room, not a house. One may not have marital relations in there until you remove the tefillin or the sefer Torah. Or yanicham bekeli, v'iniach hakeli bekli achar. You have to have a double keli. We don't paskin that way for a sefer Torah. We're more machmer by a sefer Torah. But if the second keli was made for it, it's not called the second keli. Even 10 kelim are keli yachadim chashuvim. If you put it in a proper keli with keli, you can put your tefillin or sefer Torah on your bed with you, in between the mattress and your pillow, ben kar lekeses, but you can't put it directly underneath it. Why are you putting it in your bed? No one should steal it. And that can be vafilo ishta ima bamita. Halacha 25. Kedushas tefillin kedusha gedoyli. Shkolz manchat tefillin berosh shol adam al zroyoy head then hand. He automatically, the tefillin has a koyach to imbue us with God, with Yireh Shamayim. Hu anav, Yireh Shamayim. And it's a power that the tefillin will give you. Ve'einoi nimshach b'schayka b'sicha b'teila. Ve'einoi maharav ha'machshav v'srois. Ela mafane libe b'divrei yamas v'tzedek. Lefikach, look at therefore, Rambam says, tzarich ha'adam lishtadal yis'olav kol hayoyim. Shemetzvas and kachi. And furthermore, they said on Rav, who was a Talmud of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, kol yomov. No one saw him walk, even for Amos, without saying words of Torah, without tzitzis, or without tefillin. Final halacha chavav. Afal pisha mitzvasam l'lavshem kol hayoyim. Nevertheless, wearing tefillin b'shas tefillah, wow, yoiser, it's the most important. Amru chachamim, that whoever reads Kriyas Shema without wearing tefillin, ki'ilu meid edu sheker ba'atzmai. In yeshiva, the good bachrim, when we would say the Shema in the beginning, far the mezoinus, they would put on tefillin. V'chol she'eino maniach tefillin oiver b'shmoyne asei. Sharei ba'arba pashis tzivah shel tefillin shorosh, and v'shel tefillin shel yad. And in the positive, Mesayim b'toy v'chol harogel b'tefillin. Rogel b'tefillin, that's the lashon of the Rambam. Ma'arich yomim, will have long days. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem aleim yichyu. What's the drasha? That when Hashem is aleim, when is Hashem on you? When you're wearing tefillin, then yichyu, you will live. Shkoyach. Wow. Tomorrow already we go to the next. That was great.